Welcome back to the channel. This space, it's for the ones who've been called too quiet, too calm, too forgiving. It's for those who gave everything, only to be replaced while standing still. If you've ever been erased by the person you once built your future around, then this story is yours too. She said it was a retreat, a chance to heal, to reflect after the storm. I'd just buried my father, inherited the land he spent a lifetime protecting. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she needed space. While I stayed home with our kids, school lunches, late fevers, bills, she was spending my inheritance with him. She took what was left of my trust, and while I waited for her return, she filed for divorce. Before everything cracked open, my world was quiet, predictable, safe. I'd wake up before the sun, start the coffee, check the front porch for that local paper I kept reading, even after they cut half the staff. The kids would shuffle into the kitchen barefoot, half awake, and I'd already have their cereal bowls lined up like clockwork. Our neighborhood was one of those places where people waved even if they didn't know your name, where trash day was a reminder that everyone's got something they're trying to get rid of. I fixed what broke, mowed the lawn every Saturday, paid every bill early, not because I had to, but because peace for me was earned. Supported her when she went back to school, then changed her mind. I paid for the yoga certification, drove across town to pick her up when classes ran late. I thought that's what love looked like. Showing up, holding steady, being the place someone could land. I didn't realize I was becoming the background to her next story. That while I was building something solid, she was planning her escape from the very peace I protected. She was magnetic. The kind of woman who walked into a room and softened the air just by smiling. But that smile, I started to notice it didn't always reach her eyes anymore. Especially when I spoke about things that grounded me: land, legacy, routine. Lately she'd just nod, like I was explaining something to a stranger. But not the kind of laugh that joins in. It was the kind that ends a conversation. And then she said, "Well, he's consistent. I'll give him that." And my daughter Emma is sunlight bottled up. She still asks me to check for monsters under her bed. My son Ben thinks I can fix anything. He once handed me a broken action figure and said, "You're like Grandpa. You don't throw stuff away, you fix it." I still keep that toy in the top drawer of my desk. Not because it works, but because that was the last week before everything broke. Introduce in-laws and friends with tension underneath. Her sister Jules always had sharp eyes, the kind that scanned for cracks. She once asked, "Don't you ever want something more?" I didn't know what she meant at the time, but looking back, I think she knew before I did. My buddy Ray at work, he knew something was off too. Said I looked tired, that maybe I needed to ask for more help at home. I shrugged it off. Said I looked tired, that maybe I needed to ask for more help at home. I shrugged it off. Said I'm built for this, but even hammers splinter under enough pressure. Close with quiet reflection. Set tone for coming fracture. They weren't bad people, just people who thought I'd never leave the table, no matter what they served me. And I was the kind of man who'd swallow the silence, until I realized I was the only one not eating. It wasn't about the money. It never was. That what mattered to me was carrying my father's name with honor. Was watching my son look up at me like I had answers to questions he hadn't even asked yet. Was hearing my wife say thank you for being steady, even if she didn't always understand what that cost. My father wasn't loud, but he didn't need to be. He taught me that respect isn't demanded, it's practiced. That a man's name is only worth something if he defends it without making noise. When he died, I didn't just lose a parent. I lost the blueprint for everything I was trying to build. Make the viewer feel the emotional burden of legacy. He left me the land he fought for, not acres of wealth, but purpose. Said take care of it, and it'll take care of you. I wanted to plant trees that build something our kids could pass on. I told my wife, this isn't just property, this is us, rooted. She smiled, but I remember now. It was the kind of smile that drifts right past your eyes. Touch on fatherhood, the bond he clung to most. My son once asked, will I own land too someday? And I said no, you'll inherit it, because I'll earn it first. I remember the way he nodded, like he understood legacy, even before he knew the word. Wrap with foreshadowing, quiet tension. All I wanted was to carry what came before me, and hand it off stronger. But the people I trusted to stand beside me were already standing somewhere else. She said she needed time to think. A retreat, a few days to clear her head, be somewhere still. I didn't argue. Grief was still heavy on my chest after Dad passed. If she needed space, I wasn't going to be the one to close the door. She kissed the kids goodbye but didn't look back at the house. When she hugged me, it felt like muscle memory, not emotion. Hope you're resting too. No, emojis. No, I miss you. Just enough to keep me from asking questions. Bring in the house. The loneliness creeping in. Nights were louder without her. The fridge seemed to hum loud. The hallway light flickered like it didn't know if it should stay on or give up. The kids asked when she'd be back. I said soon, but I didn't know if I believed it. Drop a few unsettling signs, but not conclusion. A charge came through on our shared card. Something about an energy spa. I shrugged it off. She'd been into that lately. Then a second one. A room service bill with wine and a second entree. Still, I told myself maybe she's treating herself. But that night when I texted love you, she didn't reply, just left me on red. I didn't know what I was losing yet. But something had shifted, like when you step into a house you've lived in for years, and suddenly feel like a guest in your own hallway. It wasn't always like this. Before the silence, before the retreat, there were nights she held my hand just because. Nights she'd wake me up laughing at her own dreams. She used to make me playlists. Burn CDs with our initials on them. The first one said, "For the man who never lets me fall." I still have it, in a box, under a pile of things I don't want to look at. We always do the hard stuff together. That stuck with me. When the car broke down in winter, we walked 3 miles through snow to get formula. She joked that she married a man, not a mechanic, but then wrapped her arms around me like I was enough. Now, that warmth in her eyes had cooled to polite glances. Conversations got shorter. She stopped asking me how I slept. I used to tell myself she was tired. Now I wonder if she'd already left months before she packed a bag. I remember the day I signed over access to the trust account. She said, "It's just in case. You never know what could happen." I smiled and said, "I trust you with everything." She looked me in the eye and said, "I know." But now, that moment plays in my head on loop. Not because of what I said, but because of how she didn't blink. It was a Thursday. Kids were with my sister overnight. I made her favorite dinner, grilled salmon, jasmine rice, candles eve. She walked in, looked at the table, and said, "Oh, I already ate." No apology, no question, just a shrug. Like all this was background noise. The betrayal isn't loud, it's quiet and deeply felt. She scrolled her phone the entire time I cleaned the kitchen. I caught a name flash across her screen. Isra. I asked, "Friend from the retreat?" She nodded. We stayed in touch. He's grounding. He's grounding. That's what I used to. Later that night I went to log into the trust account to schedule a transfer for the kids' school fees. Password denied. Tried again. Denied. I opened my email. There was a notice. Your password was updated successfully. Timestamped 3 hours early. While I was seasoning her dinner, she went to bed early that night. Didn't say goodnight. Just turned off the light. I stood in the kitchen, alone, with the wine still breathing, and the food going cold. That's when I realized I hadn't just been replaced. I'd been deleted. She didn't yell. Didn't accuse. Didn't accuse. She just withdrew. Like I was the chapter she'd already read, and now wanted to forget. The headlights lit up the garage door, like a spotlight I didn't ask for. It was 9:13 p.m., but I didn't check the time until I'd been sitting there for over an hour. I just kept hearing one thing in my head, over and over. How the hell did we get here? I did everything right. I stayed. I provided. I never humiliated her. Never yelled. Never made her choose between her passions and her family. But somehow, I became optional. A placeholder. Go deeper. Let the emotional cracks show. That trust account wasn't just numbers. It was a handshake between me and my father. A promise to protect what he left behind. And now, it was being siphoned by someone I used to lay beside every night. Someone who still had my name on her driver's license. Use quiet details to ground the pause. The neighbor's dog barked. Someone drove by slow. The porch light flickered. I could have gone inside, asked questions, started a fight, but I didn't. I just let the silence press against my ribs. Like maybe it had something to tell me. That night didn't end with a door slam or a scream. It ended with me walking inside and realizing I was living with someone who had already left me. She just hadn't packed the last suitcase yet. I never planned to say this out loud, but since truth is all I've got left, here it is. I took out a personal line of credit behind my father's back, signed my name on the dotted line, paid off the first few months of rent with overtime shifts. And when she got her first student, I bought her flowers and said, "It's yours. You built it." I never told her how much it cost me. Second backstory, quiet forgiveness of emotional betrayal. Then there was Ezra. The first time I heard that name wasn't after the retreat. It was 2 years ago. She said he was just someone she met at a workshop, but I saw the way she lit up when she mentioned him. I asked her, "Is there something I need to know?" She cried, said it was just a fantasy, that she felt guilty even thinking about it. I believed her. And more than that, I protected her from her own mistake. I didn't shame her. I didn't bring it up again. I thought love meant giving someone the space to choose you again. Shift tone, not bitter, but measured. I thought I was choosing grace. But now I see, I was setting the table for someone else to eat off my plate. End on quiet devastation. Not anger, just truth. I carried her shame like it was ours. Now she carries my money like it's hers. There's a kind of silence that doesn't ask for peace. It asks for permission to end something. Begin with a small moment that opens the door to everything. I was looking for Ben's birth certificate in the drawer, where we keep the family files. School needed a copy, and there it was, an envelope I didn't recognize. My name on the front, sealed, not May. Opened it, and what I found wasn't meant for me. She'd changed the secondary beneficiary on the trust account, removed my name from the property title, and the paperwork was dated 2 weeks before my father died. Before the money ever touched our account, before she ever asked for a retreat. Dropped the emotional blow quietly. She was rewriting the future without him. It wasn't just that she took it. It was that she planned, and I didn't even know I was being cut out. Until it was already filed away in a drawer. She thought I'd never open. Then comes the real knife. The kids. Later that night, I asked Ben if he wanted to come with me to the hardware store. He hesitated, then said, "Mom says we don't have to go with you if we don't want to." That sentence, it didn't come from an 8-year-old boy. It came from someone planting words in his mouth. I just nodded, told him I'd bring back gum. But inside, something split. Not loud, just final. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I opened a new bank account, called a lawyer before sunrise, and realized I wasn't losing a wife. I was losing the lie that she'd ever been one. I didn't confront her, didn't wave the document, didn't ask who Ezra really was. I just nodded at the quiet and let it answer everything I used to wonder, and built a folder titled, "In case she forgets who I am." Bring in the silent preparation. Lawyer, bank, evidence. Called a lawyer, told him I wasn't looking for revenge, just accuracy. He listened, didn't interrupt, sent a checklist within the hour. Bank visit came next. Not ours, mine. New accounts, asset protection, passwords, verifications. I transferred what I could, what was still untouched, and I printed everything else. Every charge, every wire, down to the glass of wine she bought him on my birthday. Don't over-explain, just show quiet control. I didn't tell her I knew. I still made the coffee, still folded the towels, still helped Ben with math after dinner. Because chaos wasn't the weapon I needed. Silence was. They expect men like me to break, to shout, slam doors. But I wasn't raised to waste energy. I was raised to endure, and then act once. Sometimes you just rearrange the room, until the person who thought they owned it doesn't recognize where they're standing anymore. I contacted the land office, reviewed the property title she tried to slip her name onto. The signature she used, I never wrote. I had it flagged, froze the title, cited inheritance terms. Suddenly the land was mine again. On paper and in principle, I stopped depositing money into our joint account. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, but assumed she could outweigh me. She started paying for things on her own. I watched her pride swallow the silence. She said things she shouldn't have. One night she told me, "You don't make me feel like a woman anymore. Ezra makes me feel seen." I didn't flinch, just let the audio run in my pocket. Saved it in the folder. I pulled copies of every transaction she made with the trust. Found one rental in his name. Cross-checked emails. Screen-recorded logins. Everything she thought she buried. I quietly exhumed. She asked me why the Wi-Fi password changed. I said, "Must have reset during the storm." She stared at me for a long time, like she could feel the ground shift beneath her feet, but didn't know why. There were nights I almost walked away, not just from her, from all of it. The land, the name my father worked his whole life to protect. I started thinking, maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe I should have let them have it all. The money, the house, the future they tried to build without me. Maybe dignity was quieter when I didn't have to fight for it. You don't prepare for this kind of betrayal. Not when it's slow. Not when it comes from the same voice that once told you, "You're my safe place." I wasn't eating much. Wasn't sleeping either. And every time I looked in the mirror, I wondered if I was still the man my kids saw when they called me dad. It's one thing to lose someone. It's another to realize they never saw you at all. But leave room for quiet resilience. A flicker of clarity. I don't know if I did everything right. I don't know if this silence will ever feel like peace. But I know this. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I didn't imagine it. And I will not apologize for saving myself. Even if it took me too long to start. Every liar has one moment, one slip,
One breath too loud, and that's all it takes. Set the scene. Not dramatic, just quietly revealing. It was a Sunday afternoon. Emma had a school play. She asked if I was coming. I told her I wouldn't miss it. I showed up early, sat alone in the second row, 5 minutes before it started. She walked in, with him, described their overconfidence. Casual, public, rehearsed. He had his hand on the small of her back. She laughed too loud. Wore the necklace I gave her for our 10th anniversary. And when she saw me, she didn't flinch. She smiled, like I was an old classmate, not the man who raised her children. Bring in the overplay. The moment that changed everything. After the play, the kids ran up. She turned to Ezra and said, "We'll be a family soon enough." I was standing 5 feet away. She knew I could hear. That was the moment. Not because she said it, but because she believed it. She thought I had already lost, that I wouldn't fight, that I wouldn't finish what I started. What she didn't know was that 2 nights earlier, she'd been on the phone with Ezra, on speaker, in the kitchen. I was in the next room, just listening. She said, "Once the trust is cleared, we're free." I pressed record on my phone. That one sentence undid everything she thought she'd gotten away with. That was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for her and started preparing for what came next. Not to punish, just to clarify. It didn't come with shouting or fists on the table. It came with an envelope. Start with the setup. She never saw it coming. She came home late from a weekend workshop. I was sitting at the table. Kids were at my sister's. She said, "Didn't know you'd be here." I didn't answer, just slid the envelope across the table. Described the contents. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Inside was the court order, reclaiming the land in my name, trust account secured, bank records, audio recordings, the line from her call, "Once the trust is cleared, we're free." Legal action already in place. Deliver the final blows. Simple, powerful details. I changed the locks. She'd been served 2 days earlier. This was just me being polite. One last conversation, and left the keys on the counter, to the house she no longer had access to. Keep the final tone cool and emotionally exact. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She just watched me go, like she suddenly remembered who she married and what kind of silence he was capable of. I didn't take revenge. I took back my name, my father's land, my children's future, my place in the story. She erased me once. I rewrote the ending. You expect noise after something like that. A fight, a scream, a slammed door. But sometimes the loudest scream is the look in their eyes when they realize they lost. Describe her reaction first. Not what she said, but what she couldn't. She didn't say a word, just stood in the kitchen, still holding that envelope. Her mouth moved like she was trying to form a sentence. But her eyes knew I had seen everything, heard everything, taken everything back that mattered. Talk about how the kids responded, gently, honestly. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. I didn't speak badly of her, didn't poison their picture of her. I just showed up. Every pickup, every science project, every late-night fever run. And after a while, they stopped asking when she was coming back and started asking if I'd stay longer. Her friends stopped calling. Her sister sent me a single text. I didn't know it had gone that far. My lawyer said she looked shell-shocked during the final hearing. I wasn't there. I'd already signed everything I needed to. Some goodbyes don't need attendant. There wasn't a grand apology. No confession, just silence. The kind that shows up when people run out of lies. If they ever laughed while cutting you out. If they ever watched you bleed and smiled like they won. Just wait. The silence after the fall. That's where your power lives. I don't look in the mirror the same way anymore. Used to check my collar, straighten the crease in my shirt. Now I look at my eyes, just to make sure I'm still in there. Describe the emotional shift. Not a full transformation, but a new version. Reflect on what he learned without sounding like a preacher. I used to think loyalty was about staying. Now I know it's about staying true. Even when that means walking away. I used to think peace meant avoiding conflict. But sometimes peace only comes after you bury what kept you silent. Acknowledge the wounds and what's left behind. I won't lie. There are days I still feel the ache, like I'm reaching for something that used to be there. But grief is just love, without a place to land. And now I've built new places for it. In the soil, in the walls of the home I kept, in the way my son looks at me, like I'm someone worth standing beside. End with a clear emotional arc. Who he was versus who he is now. They took the version of me that would have folded, and I let them, because the man who walked out of that house, he's not built to be erased. There's still a key on my chain. Brass, worn around the edges, slight bend where it dropped once on the driveway during a snowstorm. Introduce it gently, not just as an object, but as a symbol of all he endured. It was the key to our first home, the one we moved into right after Ben was born. She used to call it our little beginning. I changed the locks months ago, but I never threw the key away. Connect it to the betrayal. Let the object carry the hurt. The day I found the paperwork, the day she'd started rewriting our future without me, I found this key in her purse, sitting next to a receipt for 2 wine glasses, in a rental unit I didn't know we had. That key had meant safety, home, and now it sat beside everything she used to walk away from it. When I handed her the eviction notice, I had the key in my pocket, didn't show it, but I could feel it press into my hand as I passed her the envelope. Let the object symbolize not just pain, but survival. I keep it now not because it opens anything, but because of what it doesn't open anymore. It reminds me of everything I gave, and everything I reclaimed, not just the house, not just the truck, but the version of myself that knew better, and finally acted on it. She thought I'd melt, that I'd beg, that I'd hold the door open like I always did. But this time, I held the key, and I locked it behind me. I haven't heard from her in weeks. No call, no emails, just silence. And you know what? It's enough. Not because justice was loud, but because it was real. I didn't break her. I just stopped holding her together. So if you're sitting in your car, with your hand on a key that no longer fits the life you built, just know, you're not crazy. You're just waking up. In the version of you that survives this, he's going to be quiet, but he won't ever be forgotten. I didn't burn her things, didn't show up at her door screaming, didn't call the kids and tell them who she really was. I just protected what was mine, quietly, completely, and I still wonder, for turning the lock one last time, and walking away with nothing but my name in a folder full of truth. She would tell you I was cold, detached, ruthless, even. But tell me, is it ruthless to take back what someone tried to erase? Is it bitter to protect the only legacy your father left you? Or is it just survival? In a world where some people smile while taking the very ground beneath your feet, reframe the moral lens. Not as vengeance, but as clarity. I didn't get even. I got clear. And sometimes, clarity is all a man can afford, when everything else has already been spent. I'm not asking for a medal. I'm not even asking to be understood. Just tell me this. If someone tried to rewrite your story while you were still in it, would you have let them? They thought I'd break, thought I'd fold, thought I'd sit there like I always had, holding everything while they walked away. But I didn't shout, I didn't beg, I just waited, until they handed me the rope. If someone ever tried to erase you, if they handed you silence and expected surrender, then this story was yours too. Subscribe if you've ever protected something they thought you'd give away, and share this if you know someone who stayed calm, just long enough to take everything back. I don't know what she told her friends. I wasn't there for those conversations. I just remember the way she looked when I left the keys on the counter. Like a woman who never imagined the quiet one would be the one to leave. I don't know what he promised her. I just know what I saw. His hand on her lower back, her laugh a little too loud, and the way she didn't look surprised when she saw me. Just relieved I didn't make a scene. I wasn't told what they planned, but I saw the document. I saw my name missing from the title. I saw the date. I saw the lie before it became law. Would you have fought back, or just walked away and let them take what you built? Tell your story in the comments. I read them, I sit with them, and I answer, not with noise, but with proof that men like us, we don't break, we build in the silence.